Good evening, everyone. Zhao back again. Today, extra special guest, Peter Simeti. We're going to have a lot of fun talking with him, but very quickly, for anyone who is interested, Empire of the Undying Sun update. We are at 105 backers, 58% towards our goal after 1 week. So we are doing quite well. Anyone who's interested in the greatest horror campaign for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition or 1st edition, we got you covered right here. It's about a 450 page campaign guide, adventures from level 1 to 10. In addition, we have another 12 adventure modules that fit into this campaign setting. You got new mechanics like the Dream Realm, simplified naval combat, wargaming. We got just about everything. So if you're interested, come on over and go support that on Kickstarter. I will throw a link in the chats real quick. But tonight we have a guest, a special guest, who throughout his career has shown us new feats of horror, starting with his self-created comic, which is popular everywhere and especially beloved by the late great wrestler Roddy Piper, a man who continues to publish all sorts of comics on his through his company Alterna, which there is a link in the chat and should be in the description. Extra special and spooky guest, Peter Simeti.
How's it going?
Excellent. So Pete, I was looking for good spooky topics for Halloween, and I was like, okay, well, there's like big overarching horror themes, but you know, in every culture, you have the little horror stories. You have that house down that one street that's haunted. You've got that thing in the woods that scares the crap out of kids. Legend and folklore is really where it's at and where it all starts. And as a man, the creator, the writer of King Cryptid, which heavily has a folklore and sort of local creepiness theme, and someone who lives in the Northeast, which is probably the best place in the U.S. for those kind of stories. How would you say that like local legend and folklore has really influenced you in your work?
Well, I mean, it definitely influences the King Cryptid series a lot. That's for sure. It didn't really influence the chair.
Yeah.
So it really has only influenced the King Cryptid series. But I've always been a fan of that stuff. You know, I've always just been fascinated by it. I think a lot of people are. I don't think I'm unique in that respect. But I think it's because, I mean, I've had weird experiences in my life. I think we all have. And sometimes it's just more fun and maybe a little bit I don't know, it makes you feel more comfortable when you don't know what that sound was or what you saw there or what that spooky house looks like on the inside, and you invent stories to kind of soothe your fears. And I think a lot of that has really worked itself. Like everything with this stuff, I think has a kernel of truth. I don't
Mhm.
think it's entirely fictitious or made up, but I think, a large part of it probably is. And I think that's what makes it so interesting, though, is that we all kind of have been doing this for a very long time, like as long as human beings have been alive. And that's what really fascinates me is that we know so much today about so many things, or at least I think we do. Who knows? Maybe in 1,000 years they'll say otherwise. But that's what's so funny is we view things so linearly, like like the time that progresses, we get smarter and smarter, and we think that's how it works. And even as smart as we think we are today, as advanced as we think we are today, we still don't know everything, and we still come up with fantastical explanations for some of this stuff. And I can't tell if it'll just always be that way. I hope it will, because I think that kind of shows that the human imagination is still alive and thriving. But it is kind of funny that no matter how smart we think we still feel the need to make shit up.
Yeah, so do you think, like, that local and legends and folklore have, sort of like a morality tale quality to them? Um,
Yeah, I think
or
that's part of it. You know, not just morality, but also like a warning.
yeah,
What better way to scare children, especially, and get them to behave and not be stupid and go to the place that they shouldn't go to, than to really concoct a very frightening story that traumatizes them for the rest of their life.
yes,
And, and it'll stick with you. And maybe one day you become an adventurous adult that tests the theory out, or maybe you don't. But it's one of those things where you can see where a lot of these stories, especially when they involve kids, or they're getting lost, they get eaten, there's something bad happens to them, whatever it is, you can see that it really is something to tell children, because you don't want to be like so and so who went out in the woods and you know uh, got turned into mulch the next day.
yeah, yeah,
It's just kind of interesting to see. But then the morality side of it, with the good, evil, do the right thing, and tales of heroism, you can see how all this stuff kind of spins out. But what's always what's always interesting to me is, why do we even feel compelled to do that? You know, why do we, like? I mean, I don't know. Maybe we're not unique among the beings on the earth, and we just think we are. But maybe like the birds and the bees and the rabbits and the dogs and the cats, maybe they have their own morality tales and folklore and legend, and we just don't know. But
could be.
as far as human beings go, from what we can see, we've seen that, like, this is something that we have geared towards. Yes, this is what is good, this is what is bad, and we come up with stories to validate those things and kind of back them up. And it's
Yeah,
curious to me as to why we even do that to begin with. That's interesting.
I kind of have a theory. I think what separates us from the apes is that we are primed, like we have been able to pass down knowledge, and to me, um, you could tell someone, "Hey, don't eat that thing until you're blue in the face," and they're going to eat it, right? And then they'll get sick. Like, especially if you got an animal, you could tell them like, "No,
Hmm.
don't eat that chocolate," and then you're one vet visit later. But I think for humans, stories are the sugar that makes the medicine go down easier. Like something in us
Yeah.
clicks where we resonate with the people in the story, and we can pick out the message like, oh, I went downstairs and therefore Santa didn't come because I was naughty. Or, I stayed out all night waiting for the great pumpkin, so he didn't come.
Yeah, yeah. It makes these things that are sometimes either too difficult to explain, especially depending on, your emotional maturity, your emotional intelligence. It's children, it's usually pretty low. So you got to kind of put them into bite-sized chunks that it's easy for them to understand, and easily digestible stories. Metaphor, kids seem to really get drawn more towards that. Adults obviously too, but it's harder to be literal with a kid because they just don't have the experience to draw upon. So it's easier to
Yeah.
be metaphorical and fantastical, and make things much larger than life. And it's funny what Ross is saying about, people getting eaten in the woods and whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff still happens.
Yeah.
It's still not a good idea to just wander off on your own into unfamiliar territory, whether you're a child or an adult. But that's the kind of thing that I really I hate to see the fact that there's so many things for kids now that are being dumbed down, and you
Yeah.
have these elements of danger, conflict, letting them know that, yeah, you can overcome things. That's important, but also letting them know that sometimes there's some stuff out there that it's just it's too much for you,
Too much. Yeah.
you know. And if you don't let them know that the world not only can be a scary place, but just quite frankly is a scary place, if you don't let them know that, they're gonna it's just bad. And then to see
Yeah.
stories like what we were saying, make it easier with stories to understand these concepts and to understand these things and to get a better grasp of the world around us. That's the irony of escapism, is that people think it's entirely just to escape reality. And some of that, it's good to take a vacation away from the day to day and immerse yourself in another world, escape that way. But a lot of the times you emerge from that world having a little bit more clarity in reality. And that's the kind of thing that makes escapism so important. Is it almost gives you a chance to
Yeah.
take a vacation away from reality for a bit to then better understand reality. But of course it's got to be a good story. It's got to be told well. It's got to have characters that resonate. But that's the thing, is this kind of stuff I think is just appealed to humanity for a long time, and I hope it always continues to be that way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the good ones will eventually filter down. I'm sure there has to, for every, hook left on a car's rearview mirror that we hear, there must have been like 1,000 stories that just sucked and never went anywhere.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. I said it the other day. I was doing a stream. I don't know, it was maybe a few weeks ago, that the vast majority of comics they suck,
yeah,
and it's been that way for a long time. But you could say that about everything, music, movies, TV, whatever. The vast majority of things aren't that great that gets created in that sense. Um, there's a ton of stuff that's great, but there's an overwhelming amount that we just don't know about, that so much of it doesn't even exist anymore because it sucks so bad that no one gave a crap to carry it on and kind of go, yeah, we should preserve this thing. I think
yep,
that's what upsets so many people, though, when you see the real good stuff getting tinkered with, because proportionately speaking, we have so few of it. So
hmm
it is funny though when because it is, sometimes we look back nostalgically and everything goes, it's so much better then than it was now, and in some cases, yeah, definitely. But it wasn't like overwhelmingly. Sorry if I hit the mic and it went "Bruh" for a
it's
second,
okay.
but it wasn't overwhelmingly this big thing where everything was great and now everything is bad. It wasn't like this big extreme. But I think we forget sometimes about how many things just didn't quite stick the landing, and characters that didn't stay around. And I look back at a lot of the early comics from, I don't know, maybe the 50s to even the 70s, when they were doing a lot of episodic stuff and just
hmm
throwing a new character in every issue, you
Yeah,
know? And it's amazing how many of them you look at and go, "Oh, man,
they're
that
just
character,
terrible.
that's a stinker," but they just keep on. Let's come up with another one. Come up with see what sticks, see what resonates, see what we could really flesh out and have fun with, and that people enjoy. And among all the stuff that gets created, there's only, the cream rises to the top. So it's interesting to see with that kind of stuff. And I love it. I love people being very creative and coming up with, even if it's a goofball concept or whatever.
Yeah.
But it stinks that nowadays we don't have a lot of leeway for that, I guess.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes into comics, there's not a lot of, it feels like, I guess it feels like that for everything too. People don't really get a time to find themselves creatively.
Yeah.
If you're not having a consistent, somewhat successful run after run after run of whatever it is you're doing, you disappear pretty fast. And it's because there's so many more people now doing things, and the playing field is so leveled.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to unfortunately agree with you on that. I don't know if, I mean, part of it is the distribution isn't there, so you can't get your product to your end audience,
Mm,
which means, well, a you don't get cash, which most of us, like to use cash to pay the rent and stuff. But the other thing is you don't get the feedback from people, so you can't really tell, are they resonating with this or not. Um,
yeah,
Maybe web comics, maybe that works
yeah,
in some cases, but it's not the same thing. Plus, the revenue is not there. So,
yeah. It's just it's tough. Stuff just kind of comes and goes so quick now.
yeah,
Um, I feel like it's at a detriment to storytelling. And I know that they say that it's that way because people's attention spans are getting lower and whatever else, and they blame it on like TikTok or this or that or whatever. But meanwhile, then there's people that you sit down and watch, some 3 to 4 hour Joe Rogan podcast, you
yeah,
know, and that stuff is really popular too. It's always been more about the quality than of the content than anything else. And having everything kind of dwindle down and cater to the lowest common denominator hasn't really ever advanced the art form of anything ever. So it's always, I mean, how many things do you look back especially and go, yeah, that was ahead of its time, and then it found its audience. And it's all these different people kind of taking a risk, and even the people that finance something or produce something or whatever it may be, all these studio systems that used to exist that were putting out a lot of movies that they were taking a chance on, or publishers that were taking a chance on creators or a comic line or whatever. It feels like we don't have that really
yeah,
anymore. We don't have these stalwarts who appreciate and understand creativity comes first, the story above all else, characters matter more than anything, and everything else is so secondary to that, and everything should be playing to that. And instead we have this kind of upside down system, and I think it's really just strange for us to understand. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are out there and they go, well, whatever's out there is out there. That's what is presented to me. And whether it's good or not, I mean, I guess it must be good, because if it wasn't, why would they make it? And that is
hmm
the attitude, I think, of a lot of people, where it becomes like, I was talking to my mom a while back about like the food she's eating, and she's like, "Well, if it was bad for you, why was it be in the grocery store?" And I'm like,
because someone's making money.
it's like, oh boy, you sit there and go, "This is going to be a long conversation.
Yeah,
Do I got time for this one?" And it's that kind of mentality of like, well, if this was not a good thing, why would the studio make it? Why would they put hundreds of millions of dollars into it? Why would it be popular if it's not good? And I think that's such a, I don't know, it's such a weird path for us to go down, that it kind of has tuned out so much quality stuff, because it's really weird that we don't see that the rising tide that lifts all boats kind of a thing. We're not
yeah,
seeing okay, so they had a big hit with this thing, and now there's other stuff that's like it that we're gonna start scouting for. And so, like, let's say that the comic book movies are huge. We're going to start scouting for other comic book like properties, but not big tentpole films. Maybe something we throw $10 million at, or 20 million, and we make a decent movie out of it and see where it goes, how we could develop it. It
Uh,
just seems more like let's throw 300 million every time at this thing and hope it makes back its money.
well, it's even worse because have you seen the budgets for the stuff on Disney Plus? Um, I mean, they're absolutely outrageous. They're paying as much for
Yeah.
like a season of crappy shows as they are for one of these tentpole movies, and it's to me, it's mind-boggling. So to me, part of the problem is you and I grew up in fantastic times. There was like a hit movie almost every week of the summer at a movie
Yeah.
theaters. We had the Image Guys before they became Image Guys, and then when they became Image Guys, so they were like at the top of their game. So we got to see the best of the best, and the quality of things that were going on were probably abnormally high. So to expect it to stay there is a little unrealistic.
And I didn't
Excuse me.
even expect it to stay there. I was expecting it to surpass it.
I,
Like when I
I,
was
I
watching
know.
things like Batman the Animated Series,
That,
I was thinking this is amazing, but it's only going to get better. It's only going to
no.
get better than this. I'm like a
Well,
little kid watching this, and because I saw the progression before of things relatively, sometimes you had a blip or an outlier where it was like, wow, that really either was phenomenal for the time or a big stinker for the time.
yep.
But it progressed pretty naturally of like, yeah, talent is getting better and better. The quality of things is getting better and better. And now I look back and I'm like, I'm still waiting for the better. It just seems to like there's points where it plateaus, there's points where the bottom just drops out, and then like maybe it climbs back up a little bit again. But even the other day, I'm looking at Dark Knight, the Christian
Hmm.
Bale, Christopher Nolan film, and there's parts of it that are spectacular, and then Christian Bale speaks as Batman, and it's been like 20 years, and I still can't get used to it. I'm still just like, why? Stuff like this. Like, what are you doing? Was no one like, look? Can you just kind of drop the register? Can Kevin Conroy come over and
Yeah.
teach you how to talk like Batman for a second?
Well,
And you don't have to go the whole time.
yeah. That was the funny thing about Kevin Conroy too is he didn't drop Batman's registers. He made Bruce Wayne higher. But sorry, getting back to my point a little bit earlier was that something happened with the younger millennials. Like they did not have the quality of stuff that we grew up with. So I think from younger millennials through Gen Z through Gen Alpha, like they just don't know what a good story is. They don't know what good art looks like. Like I've had people on Twitter tell me that whatever coloring book style of art the X-Men use now is better than Mark Silvestri or Jim Lee. Like, what are you talking about? Like, have you
Yeah,
seen the
yeah.
two next to each other? To me, I think that's a large part of the problem. Like with Disney Plus, I don't know if you saw the Daredevil series last year or earlier
No,
this year.
no. I don't have Disney Plus, but
It was it, it was crazy because somebody said, you know what fans would really love if the kingpin and his wife went to marriage counseling. And this wasn't like one time. This was multiple episodes. There was only like 10 episodes and at least 5 of them they're in
it
marriage
wasn't just like
counseling.
a character moment to show like 5 minutes of this occurring so you understand where this
Oh
guy is
god, I
at,
wish it was 5 minutes.
to
It-
illustrate because that stuff is great when you get these little character moments that kind of come in to just illustrate a point of how this character's personality is. It's the classic show don't tell. But when you linger on with that thing and it becomes like a story arc, let alone just
yeah.
like a whole episode or a whole issue or something.
It wasn't an episode. It's like a whole 5 episode like plot point where
Oh man.
like his wife is not happy with him and she's like going behind his back trying to run the criminal enterprises and he's got to sit there and take it for like, well, I'm
Because
sorry, Vanessa.
that was a big part of Sopranos, right? Was
Yeah,
Tony going to the therapist and stuff, right?
right, right,
But it
right.
wasn't like the entirety of the show.
Well, and the other thing was it was now I never really watched Sopranos that much, but if I recall correctly, it was never Tony's wife in there telling him what a piece of crap he was, right? So like, why would the kingpin, like, okay, even if he loves her, why would he tolerate this? You know, earlier, at least in the Netflix one, he was just like breaking people's necks and stomping on people to like, okay, dear, I'll try harder because I love you. Like, why? Why? You know, it's like they didn't understand the whole show is about like martial arts action plus lawyer procedural drama. Like that's it. You don't need anything else.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
good.
There's so many things that are like a slam dunk, and to bring it back to folklore and legends and stuff like that, that stuff is so rich, there's no filler. There's no filler story here. There's nothing that's just we're gonna linger on this character moment for a second about the legend, the cryptid, the monster, the creature, so you have an understanding of why they are who they are and can
Hmm.
sympathize with them.
Yeah.
It just kind of hits you with boom, that's the character. This is what they're doing, and this is what you need to learn from it. And that was strong storytelling. Like direct storytelling is very strong storytelling. When you start to get into more nuanced stuff, that's when you really got to be careful with how much nuance you put in there. It's why over explained origin stories are horrible.
Hmm.
You can have your origin story, but you got to be direct. You got to pick the right moments, and you got to hope that they land and they resonate. If you have your origin story and it just shows every dumb little minutia, because you're like, but that'll ground the character and make them more relatable. Uh, all it does is over explain, and you lose the mystique of why this individual is interesting to begin with, because of course, yes, probably most of their day is full of boring tedium, but that's not what made them down the path that went down. So you have to isolate the important parts, the important moments of their life. And it's the same thing, like if you were to eulogize someone, and you don't pick on the more important elements, but you pick on all this minutia that doesn't matter, and then you just walk away, people are going to be like, all right, but you go, but doesn't that make them more relatable? They were just like us. Sometimes they didn't get to have the thing they wanted for dinner. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, like fantastic. You skipped over the whole part, where they saved children from a burning building, but at least we got the relatable. They didn't get the pizza topping they wanted that one time.
um, so in King Cryptid, I believe we have discovered that King Cryptid was originally a Native American, if I remember correctly,
Well,
or he was turned into King Cryptid by a shaman.
yes,
Yes.
sort of. That hasn't been explained fully yet, but
Okay.
what has been touched upon is that the Wampanoag shaman, Black Moon, at some point in time, because I've explained a little bit more of it on live streams, so it might be kind of like crossing the stream of
Okay.
what I said and what the comic has said so far. But a Wampanoag shaman is the person that finds King Cryptid and gives him his moonstone, the cosmic moonstone that he has, and that restores his humanity. Before that point, he's just kind of like this bloodthirsty monster. And it hasn't been said just yet, but for about, well, maybe actually it has. I think in issue 2 we said for about 100 or so years, he was that way, and he was powerless to do anything about it. He knew what was going on. He knew the horrible things that he was doing, but had no control over it, because that was part of the curse that was placed upon him. And so the curse makes him immortal, but it also turns him into this monster. We haven't gone really into his origin fully yet. We're going to touch upon that more in issue 10. But he is of an indigenous Native American origin. I haven't said from where yet, though, but I will say that he's not of Wampanoag origin.
Ooh.
So yeah, so he works his way to throughout the country to get to where he is. So his origin is somewhere else. When he was a human being, he was in a different part of America. And this was probably, I haven't said it yet in the comic, but this was probably around the time of like the probably late 16th century, something along
Okay.
those lines. So this is like pre America Revolution, that kind of thing, and we find out a little bit more about that, but his own origin is largely lost to him. So we see a little bit of just like glimpses of his origin in issue 10, but that's because there's a couple different scenes that play out where he dives essentially into the recesses of his mind with the help of the shaman Black Moon, who he basically manages to reconnect with in issue 9. So there's a lot of stuff that King Cryptid still doesn't even know about himself, and he's been in that form for like 500 years. So we find out more about him at this point uh, with issue 9, but in Blood Moon, the crossover graphic novel, we find out even more, and then in issue 10, it picks up right after where Blood Moon leaves off, essentially, and then we find out a whole lot more. So issue 10 is really like because he goes up against a demonic doppelganger of himself in issue 10, and that's the result of what happens in the Blood Moon graphic novel. And so it really kind of forces him to really confront a bad part of his past that has been kind of laying dormant for a long time, but is now manifested and is now kind of taking control of the world around him and twisted reality.
Mm.
And all this sort of stuff. I hate saying, there's anything that's like it's weird to say stories are original or whatever. I mean, it's original to me, but there's only so many kinds of stories. There's something like there's only like 5 to 7 kinds of stories that have ever been told about anything. There's archetypal stories that have gone throughout history. So anytime I kind of almost say something like, I don't think anyone's ever done this before, I stop myself because probably someone has done something like this before. But that's not what I think this kind of stuff is about. I think this kind of stuff is about, when I say that, I mean storytelling. I think it's about diving into the world of the characters, going on a journey with them, and hopefully enjoying that journey somewhat. And what I really love about a lot of stuff in stories and in fiction especially is the ability to have some kind of self-discovery moment where you really resonate, the character really resonates with you, and you sympathize to a level where you go, yeah, what if I was in their shoes, and the things that
Mhm.
happen to them, you start going, well, how would I react to that, you know but as a storyteller, it's important to not say this is the character and they're going to tell you what to think, what to feel, and that everything they do is right or wrong. It's more about how do you interpret the events that are playing out. Like what's happening is happening to them, but it's your call to pass judgment. And whether you like a character, hate a character, agree with what they did, disagree with what they did, that's up to you. And that's what I think is so interesting about telling stories is that you get to see that audience interaction. And sometimes people feel differently with how characters play out and the things that they do. And I think that's what makes it so appealing, I think,
Yeah.
as a viewer, as a reader, whatever.
Yeah. On that idea of originality, I think like I liken it to food. Like with pizza, you have cut up stuff put on top. So it's like if you're taking things from other stories and it's very obvious like what you're taking and where, it's just a pizza with that stuff on top.
Yeah.
Whereas what you want to do is you want to take parts of things and experiences, feelings, maybe from other stories from your life, and you want to mix it all together in such a way that you can't identify any of those pieces and parts.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if I'm writing a medieval fantasy journey, they're not going to have a magic ring, um, or it's going to be like a paperweight or something unimportant. Um, so you just like in some ways George Lucas did that pretty well with his Star Wars trilogy. He was able to take all these different influences and make it seem like it was something new, even though if you knew westerns and samurai
Yeah,
movies.
and
You
even with
figured out.
that, he just kinda jumbles it up again and turns it into Willow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I agree. So with the Native American, Indian, First Nations, whatever the proper term is, influence in the backstory of King Cryptid, do you think that there's a lot of legends that made it from the people that were around pre-colonial period became part of like the colonials and sort of follow us to this day?
I don't know if I could say a lot. Just looking back at the way history usually is and how things work, I'd probably say that a very small amount
Hmm.
made it, especially unfiltered. I mean, history just it's just like a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
revisionist meat grinder, you
Of
know?
course.
So I don't know if a lot of it made through. I would honestly probably say no. That
Hmm.
would be my guess.
Interesting.
Um, but I think what has stuck is it's like everything else. It's like what we were talking about with like the crappy majority of comics that have been made. The stuff that sticks is the stuff that really hits you. You
Yeah.
know, that's the stuff that resonates and transcends generations and gets passed down over and over again. But it's unfortunate with everything throughout history. I can't even imagine the levels of story and knowledge and things that we've lost, not just uh, in America or whatever, but everywhere, all over the whole world. There's all kinds of things. Everybody always talks about like the the library, Alexandria, the burning, and
Yeah.
this and that, and it's there's probably many of those libraries, the equivalent of
Yeah.
over the course of time. Even people often say the whole the climate change or whatever with human beings and that they weren't around and so think about like the 100 200 million years ago whatever and that earth was warmer than it is now and all this kind of stuff and I always think when I hear that I go what if there were humans though, what if there were,
Yeah.
you know and I can't back it up with anything. I'm not going to go out there and try to scientifically prove it, but it always makes me think, well, what if there were? What if there were people around? What if human beings are much, much, much older than we possibly think, and we've had many levels of advanced civilization
Yeah.
throughout the course of the existence of this planet? And we explore those themes in fiction, uh, but I always feel sometimes like there's things we explore in fiction that like we have some kind of genetic memory that's trying to
Yeah.
resurface. And I think that's why certain things really resonate is because it does speak to us on this instinctual primal level. And then there's other things that we largely, at least societally, reject because they don't speak to us on that level. Like that doesn't ring
Yeah.
true.
Yeah,
So
no, I definitely agree because I think that there are like why are certain stories universal, right? Like we see gods that kind of like change their form from Greek to Roman. We see similar, even if they're not quite the same, in like Norse gods, and you've got Indian gods and whatnot. And as people move and as like specific time and I think environment changes, like those things will shift a little. But the core of what works for um, civilization, well, I would say for groups of people going from small groups of hunter gatherers, because there's a lot, if you ever study that, there's a lot of similarities between them and like early agricultural societies, to larger civilizations, to like even if you look at a lot of stuff in the Bible, like at the same time over in China, both places are debating like how do you behave in a society, which at that time would have been new or novel, so far as we know. And it
yeah,
seems
yeah.
like those things they keep coming on the same answers, and the civilizations that prosper, and are able to move forward, they are able to use pretty much the same methodology, the same structures of hierarchy, of governance and way to go forward until they don't, and then their society collapses. So I think it does, like all of us that are around today, we must have had ancestors at some point that were part of those civilizations, or we would not be here.
Yeah.
So, like, there must be some kind of genetic memory that
Yeah, like
goes through them.
yeah, like that's a crazy thing to even think about too, is that every single person alive is the result of a long lineage of people who existed. That's really insane when you sit there and think about it. That's, I think, something that, day-to-day life has like no impact on us because we have a million other things to worry about.
Mhm.
But it's crazy to think that, okay, well, here is, here you are, and you're living today, and there's whole generations of ancestors behind you that, now it's you, and you have all of that whatever flowing through you. And even the idea of calling something instinct and stuff like that, that that just seems like genetic memory. It just seems like
Yep.
there was something that was imprinted upon whoever, whenever, and that got passed down, and it made such an impact in the DNA because of some kind of trauma, some kind of whatever that got passed down. So that's a big part of King Crypto too, honestly, is DNA and genetics and things like that. And it has already been touched upon several times with different issues, but it's going to be a bigger thing over the course of the series. So all that kind of stuff, I think, really it turns like legend and folklore and stuff like that. Sometimes I'm really hesitant to say legend or myth or whatever without
Mhm.
then putting like a qualifier that well, I don't really know if it's entirely a myth, uh, because there's so many similar myths and stories and legends all over the world, and they all seem to have some kind of little nugget of truth in there,
Yeah.
and maybe, who knows, maybe it might be truer than we possibly realize. But it's just, now we're in a different time, and maybe we use different words for it, or we have a different explanation for it, or whatever. And now it's very simplified, and, well, of course it's this and this, and they thought it was that. But that's, again, that's storytelling, that's communication, which is all pretty much what storytelling really is trying to find ways to communicate ideas and concepts, um, that maybe are too big for us to really understand at their face. So it's funny that, the topic tonight being legends and folklore and creatures and all that kind of stuff. We see a lot of that in comics, and we see a lot of that in
Mhm.
fiction, obviously, but it's it's strange when, or at least I think it's strange when we dismiss so much of it, but then there's so much of it that you could say, okay, let me just tell you the story. And you'll think, like, that sounds insane. There's no way that's true. And then I'll say, well, that's part of this ancient text where they 100% say it is true. Whether that's a
Yeah.
Bible or that's whatever, it's this kind of thing that's treated as, no, this was fact. And but now to us it sounds so out there. It's like, well, what if you said this word instead of that word? What if you said this thing instead of that? Now does it seem a little bit more plausible? So it's, like I said, it's interesting to me. It's strange to me that we dismiss stuff, but yet at the same time, I think we all want to believe, but maybe there's a part of us where we're afraid to believe.
I think so. And, getting back sort of a little bit to the theme of stories changing over time, I think a lot of them are the same stories for a reason. Like, we still need to know how to behave. We still need to know, like, what should a hero, what should somebody who others look up to, what should they act like? And warnings like, oh, you better not do this, you better not do that. And I just think it changes as we go on, which was one of the I don't know if I'd say the novelties or the strong parts of early comics, because we had such a shift in lifestyle. Somebody who lived 100,000 years ago still lived a fairly similar life to someone who lived up through, let's say, 1850, 1875. Whereas when you get comics, you start shifting into a more modern life where things are so lit up. You can walk around and do things at night like you could a day. You can talk to people on the other side of the world through means that aren't witchcraft. You could see pictures and hear people sing who are long dead. Uh, so we live in a strange place, and I think that comics took a lot of those myths and those legends and sort of repackaged it in. You're no longer in the forest, in the jungles. Now you're in a concrete jungle, and they made it easier for us to understand in our current state of living, state of being.
Yeah, I mean, there's so there's so much that is going on just in the world, not just in our recent time, and not just in America or whatever, but there's so much going on that I don't think we're ready for a lot of it. And I think that up until maybe the mid 20th century, sometime
Mhm.
post World War II, maybe even just before World War II, as things were ramping up, a lot of stuff occurred. And I know some people in certain sects of life say, point to things like aliens, Roswell,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff, and
Yeah,
and all that technology has an explosion out of nowhere, and it's it's almost impossible to conceive of the amount of technology in such a short period of time. And then they go, well, there's a lot more research and development because of the war. And but the thing is, we've had wars for forever.
yeah,
Humanity's been at war since humanity was around. And the levels of explosion in technology, it's so condensed in just a matter of 50 years, let's say, compared to like that same 50 years normally would have probably took about maybe 1,000 years, stretch it out and say that, yeah, the evolution of this tech and our use of it and how we perceive it and how we can replicate it, it took a long time, many, 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 many generations. Now it's you can have, your grandparent or something that worked on doing something insane that before, for their grandparent, your great
yeah,
great grandparents would have been like, what are you talking about? This is nuts. Like
yep,
they think you
yep,
were certifiable. So it's strange. And then I think culturally we're stuck in like a loop. Going back to what you're talking about, where we grew up with a lot of stuff that became iconic and was really pushing the realm of creativity, self-discovery, storytelling, all that kind of stuff. Now we have like this self-referential loop of, if you go back 20 years, if you take any other point of time in 20 years, if you take like 1980 to 2000, feels like a different planet in some
yep,
respects. If you take 1970 to 1990, 1960 to 1980, but if you take 2020 to 2000, they're like mining the same sorts of things.
yeah.
Maybe the delivery systems have changed, internet got faster or whatever, but culturally, we're still telling relatively the same exact stories of the same franchises with the same characters, and not a whole lot is really moving forward. It
E-
it's
yeah.
weird.
Even fashion and clothing are virtually identical.
Yeah, yeah. Like, that's, I mean, you could have had a 5-year span. You could have took 1975 to 1980
Yep.
and already see like a very different world, a different everything. Um, and then by the time you get to 85, it's very, very different. So it's strange. Everything was like 5-year chunks. Even looking back and thinking, like the Beatles broke up, I think, before they were even 30.
Yeah.
It's not even, they weren't even together for 10 years in terms of once they're on the Sullivan Show to by the time they break up. but yet they put out this insane amount of music, and it seems like how did that happen? Because if you take that same amount of time and you make it modern, how did we? It seems like we sped up incredibly, and now we've slowed down dramatically, and I think we're about to speed up dramatically
Yeah.
again. And I don't know if anyone can really even guess or see where a lot of this stuff is going to go, unless you've been on the inside track for a long time. And that's the part where I think as storytellers, it's so important to kind of explore a lot of these territories. It's kind of like a virtual sandbox. You get to play around instead of doing things that have real world, real life ramifications. You get to play out, okay, well, what if there was this horrible person and this really good person, and they're put in this situation, and how would, you figure that out, and how would that play out? And depending who you are, it filters through you, and then you tell the story. And that's the predominant way that a lot of superhero type comic books
Yeah.
have been for a long time. But when you get like science fiction, and it's almost like this kind of prognostication of this is how the world's going to be, a lot of it in sci-fi turns dystopian. There's not a whole lot of utopian sci-fi.
No.
Everything's like, nah, we're going to screw it up. It's going to be really bad.
Well,
And then you
yeah.
go like, maybe don't do this. But then a lot of people take it and they go, well, maybe they just did it wrong.
Yeah. Part of the problem for me with most modern sci-fi, fantasy is fine, but sci-fi has the problem that we currently live in a dystopia. So either you're just writing modern fiction, like without anything that's really sci-fi, or you have to make it like so far advanced, like it's almost unrelatable again.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you got to put it like 500 years into the future.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas a lot of sci-fi before was you're probably going to live to see that date roll around, and like it's always funny. What is it? I think Soylent Green or something is like 2021 or 2022 or something like that. And it's always funny to see sci-fi when the date you've surpassed it now. Like there's sci-fi that takes place in the 90s. Like I think Lost in Space was in like the 90s or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, so yeah, it's kind of funny when that happens, but that's part of the charm, I guess.
well, I mean, wasn't Terminator like 1997?
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't that far off from when it was
Yeah.
made.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. The whole oh, let's see here. I keep saying we currently live in a cyberpunk dystopia and no one believes me. I disagree. The clothes are not nearly as cool as they are in cyberpunk shows, nor are the hairstyles. I mean, hair should be like giant beehive or like shaved or, crazy. The products to hold your hair in place don't exist that existed in Blade Runner. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, Portland exists, you know.
Yeah, but Portland is like you look at those people and it's just like, man, they need a shower. There's nothing that says like cool techno society
That's
about that to me.
yeah, but I mean that's kind of what I
Sorry,
think
Portlanders.
when I look at cyberpunk too, though, and a lot of other, everyone just needs a shower. Everyone's always sweaty all the time. They never think to try to establish like basic life.
Yeah,
It's usually kind of other problems they're trying to deal with, but it really is. It's just like real life, where if you ignore all the small things, they become big things, and all the big
yeah,
things become gigantic things.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's Bronze Age caveman has Bronze Age sci-fi elements like eyeglass, flammable liquids. Well, flammable liquids have always been around. I mean, ancient people use pitch, resin from pine trees to make their torches and whatnot. So that's not so crazy. I don't know about eyeglasses, but
Were there
it sounds
eyeglasses in the
interesting.
Bronze Age?
I don't think so. I mean, I know that it's probably not the right name, but Eskimos, they had like bone that they cut a slit down the middle of, kind of like Cyclops' visor. that were like ancient sunglasses
Oh
that would
wow.
cut down the glare from the snow.
Yeah,
Um,
when I was a kid, I could still do it now, but my vision is worse now than when I was a kid. And I could make like a really small little,
yeah.
and do a whole focus. And then I was like, whoa, I could see across the room. That's crazy. Going like this all day long, and trying to, that doesn't really fly. But I think about that too sometime, where I'm like, thank God I live in a time period where I can easily get glasses, because I would be
Yes.
screwed.
Well, I mean, I think all of us glasses people would just be dead. Uh, unless you were older already and you had a family that was willing to take care of you. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I couldn't see the blackboard in second grade. There's no way I would have been able to hunt.
yeah, yeah. And that's kind of the thing that I think is so weird about today, is we're kind of trusting the digital side of things so much. We're trusting technology so much that a lot of us, it's one thing to not know how to make something. A lot of
Mhm.
us take it so much for granted that the thing is there and is made, that we think it'll always be there. They're like me when I'm, like 10 years old watching Batman the animated series, thinking like, oh, it's only going to get better from here. And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it doesn't just get better. Sometimes it either flatlines or it gets worse. And especially if people that know how to do these things either don't pass it on or are pretty much rendered pointless and obsolete. I mean, there's a lot of like
Yeah.
animation techniques, a lot of art techniques, that just, I don't think we can get them back, because the people that knew how to do them never really passed on that information, and either no one wants to try to learn it, or no one can learn it, or people want to just go with the easier solution, even though the easier solution maybe doesn't really look that great. um,
Yep.
so it's kind of interesting that we have so much knowledge at our disposal right now, but it could all, everything we take for granted could all just be gone within a few years.
Yeah, well, especially considering how much is digital. If something ever happened that knocked out the electricity, I mean, at least if you could do pen and paper, you'd still have sketchbooks full of stuff that if the lights ever went back on, you could get published again. Whereas if your art method of choice is Procreate or Clip Art, Clip Studio Pro or whatever that is, you'd be
Oh yeah, anyone that's ever
SOL.
had a hard drive that gets corrupted out of nowhere knows what that's like.
Yep.
Especially if you didn't have a backup, or three or four. It's I don't know. It's crazy. I remember working at a urology place, because my mom worked there. This was when I was like a teenager, and I was just the person that scanned the documents to digitize them. And I thought, like, that's a good idea. You're having a digital backup, right? And then so I'm
Mhm.
scanning them, putting them through and whatever, and then I put them back in the box. And then one day I see him taking the boxes, and I'm like, of the paperwork. And I'm like, where did they put that? What are they doing? Because they're not going back in the filing cabinet. And they go, oh, well, since they're all in the computer now, we're gonna just get rid of these. And I'm like, being around computers more with a bunch of people who kind of haven't, I'm like, it's not permanent when it goes on here. Something can happen. There's a lot of things that can happen that can go wrong, and those files are gone. I'm like, are these stored like on a different server? And they're like, huh? Like server?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, do we have like actual like other hard drives to back this up? They're like, no, it's all on the computer. We access it and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, but something can go really wrong. And these are people's files with their health information. I'm like, what happens when there's a blackout and someone comes in? Before, you could have just had the paperwork. Now you're just like, I don't know. Gotta wait.
Y- you know what makes that story worse? With modern HIPAA laws, they're required to keep it for a certain amount of time, but then they're required to delete them after a certain amount of time. So if you had a disease or like a broken bone. Like let's say you broke your leg in a really weird place when you were a kid, right? And you had to get all sorts of screws and pins and whatever. Like well, for kids it's probably sometime after they're 18, but for most people I think it's like 7 years. After that, they have to delete them. So, if a doctor has to go back later and figure out what they did, sucks to be you. You got
Yeah.
to find out if there was a manufacturer's recall on a part.
Yeah.
Too bad.
Yeah, and this was a private practice it's no longer around. The last time that I talked to my mom, she had said that the last partner sold it off or something had happened.
Hmm.
But at the time, I remember like really horrifying me. So I'm like, this is important stuff. It's like pathology reports and people's like, they got like bladder cancer or something and whatever. And I'm like, this is important stuff. This isn't just, you come in and they're checking your weight and your height.
Yeah, yeah,
This is
yeah, yeah,
this is
exactly.
this is really important stuff. And it just seemed like it was a complete. What are you talking about? Like the files get corrupted or something can happen. I'm like, all I could think is these were the same people that one day I had to turn around and come back to work because they were like, the computer's broken. I'm like, what do you mean the computer's broken? They're like, the computer's broken. It's not working anymore. I'm like, it just was working. I just left. It was just fine. And I was like, is it on? They go, yeah, yeah, it's on. I'm like, all right, let me just come back, right? I come back. No, it's not on. They didn't even know how to turn the thing on. They're like, no one shuts the computers off here. I'm like, that's not good either. And this wasn't like a computer that I worked at that was like a vital computer. It was like a separate computer just to scan and digitize the documents. And every day after work, I would just, when I'm done, I would shut it off. And they were like, it's broken. Like, it's not broken, it's off. I come in the room and I see like two doctors, a couple of nurses, and a bunch of like the staff just all around the computer. Like it's had like a malfunction of some sort and it's on the ground and everyone's just, oh my God, what do we do? And I just go there and I just turn it on. I'm like, it was off. Like, what the hell?
So they're like the apes from 2001.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah. I couldn't believe it that among everybody in that room of like well qualified people, none of them could figure out turn the friggin' machine on. I don't know, man. I don't know.
I think in some ways idiocracy was prophetic.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's true.
and I
A
do
legend for the day, the modern day.
I do question what exactly is going to happen with AI. And then to make it worse is once Elon Musk starts getting those brain implants to work and you can just interface directly from computers to your brain, like it,
Oh boy. That's
you
that's
know,
yeah, modern horror story folklore stuff will come from that. That's for sure. I like stuff when it's localized tech to help you out. I don't like stuff when it's going to monitor your vital signs and report back to the database at
yeah,
the headquarters of wherever, and then use people also to have a mass surveillance state, which is all that's going to become. And go, why you don't want the blind person to see? I'm like, well, I do want them to see. I just don't want their eyes to report every single thing back to headquarters
yeah,
because it's privacy. But there privacy I noticed was getting eroded in a big way a few years back with social media when they want everyone to like announce their sexuality and announce how they feel about the
yeah,
politics. And it's like, guys, the curtain closes for a reason when you go to vote. Otherwise we should just be shouting out, so and so, I want that person. It's
yep,
but you erode away that idea of privacy the same way that you're talking about how they erode away the taste level for, you look at great art and go, wow, that's great, and I understand it why it's great. And then you look at modern art and go, yeah, I guess it's great because someone says it is, so sure. And meanwhile it's objectively worse. But the objectivity has gone out the window because
yep.
they have a counter argument of taste level and subjectivity and this and that or whatever, and all of a sudden it doesn't matter anymore about what is objectively good or bad or of a lesser quality than something else. Everything is just about how you feel about it, how you interpret it. And there are things in life that are like that, but a great deal many that are not. But yeah, all you
Yeah.
need is like that little bit of erosion to go, yeah, privacy. Well, you got something to hide? They treat it like that. And you go, I don't have anything to hide. It's just I don't want everyone to know everything I'm doing, and I don't want to know everything everyone else is doing all the time. I'm not sitting there though thinking that if I don't know what they're doing, it must mean that they're doing criminal behavior. It's
Yeah.
so it's a weird thing to see, and I think that's a big part of it, is that you feel like, well, don't you want that person to see? Don't you want this person to have this thing? So what if that's a little bit of it? Is that you get more of a surveillance state? Is that really that big of a deal? Unless you got something to hide, are you a criminal? It's a very weird kind of path to go down.
Weird and scary. We can look to other countries that are doing it. Like I still have friends over in China. And maybe I'm going there next year, depending. But they already have social credit systems where if you are low enough, and being low enough, maybe you spit on a sidewalk, or you cross the street where there's not a crosswalk, or you returned a library book late, or something like that. If your score gets low enough, you can't, like, most of the financial transactions they do now are all via the phone. They have an app, WeChat, and Alipay, and a couple others. But if your score is low enough, you can't use those. You can't get you can't get a home, or you can't rent an
Yeah,
apartment.
yeah.
So either you better hope that somebody lets you couch surf, but that means their social credit's going to go down. So probably not.
And our
Or you,
regular credit
yeah,
score system's already bananas as it is, so I
yeah,
can't even imagine a social credit system. Um, just mind-boggling.
yeah.
It is
It's
dystopian level sci-fi.
It's much worse, and hopefully we won't see that, but we may have to live through some of the horrors. Um, but
Well,
it does
there's
seem.
definitely
Mhm.
ramifications for it. The same thing that, like, our economy or even the global economy being tied so much to the production of communist slave labor
Yeah,
is like, okay, so we're all a cog in the communist slave labor machine. And some people are like, yeah, well, I want my cheap stuff. And it's like,
yeah.
wow, okay, that's an interesting, amount of goalposts that we've moved over the
Well,
years.
and the worst part is when people say, like, we need to make our economy so it competes with slave labor. Well, how do you compete with slave labor other than having more slave labor of your own?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. These
It's
they're crazy concepts. All I could think is remember did you watch the Justice League cartoon at all?
yeah, I think so.
You
There were
remember the
two of them,
episode?
weren't there?
Yeah, there was Justice League and then there was Justice League Unlimited, but they're both kind of like treated like the same
Same.
continuity.
Okay.
Um but remember the Justice Lords episode
Oh
with,
yeah.
like, yeah, when Superman kills Lex Luthor, and it sets off this chain reaction of now the Justice League, or they're kind of instilling martial law essentially, and everything looks like this utopia, but it's really far from. And all I could think is we have a lot of stuff that's kind of going towards that path, or in some parts of the world are already at that path of, like, yeah, but isn't it safer? Isn't it nicer? And it's like, well, yeah, when you remove freedom from the equation and it's a prison state just dressed up nice,
But
yeah, maybe you get some of that.
the problem is you don't even actually get that,
Exactly. Yeah, you
because
get the facade of that.
yeah, like I've been to China, and okay, now they have certain areas of big cities that have a lot of lights at night, and certain areas of it are clean. But you go outside of those areas, like the central business districts or the touristy areas, and it's just like there's crap all over the ground. I
Yeah.
still have friends over there, like, yeah, no, 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 don't go walking down there at night because you don't know who's there.
Yeah,
You know,
and see,
so
it ties it back to the original folklore. If you don't want to go walking on there at night,
that's right.
only now. Imagine if like modern sensibility went back into then with legend and folklore about like don't go in the woods because so and so's gonna eat you. Modern sensibility would be like, oh, what are you like racist to that creature, that monster? Don't go into.
Yeah,
Oh, I guess when you see a big scary werewolf, you just think they eat everybody, don't you?
that's right. That's right. Uh, yeah, I don't know. We do live in strange times, but it seems to me that at some point, well, I think to an extent, we are seeing a bit of a reversal, um, at least in acknowledging the taste that people have. Where a few years ago it would have been like, no, there's nothing wrong with comics. What's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong. Whereas like now we can say like, oh, okay, comics and movies are really not that great. I don't think they have enough people in quality people, or I shouldn't say quality people who can produce quality work in positions where they are able to make that work, which is a big problem. And I don't know how we get back to that.
Yeah, the power dynamic is really askew. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Um, and yeah, there is a kind of a vision problem, like a foreshadowing of events problem. People that have, the ability to see into the future of, well, if you take this to the logical extent of doing this thing for everybody or all the time, is that really going to be good? And to even pose that question a few years back of like, if we
Yeah.
keep going down this path, it's not going to work out. Um, and then some people are like, thinking, well, it'll be fine, or it's not as bad as you think, or whatever it might be. I think with comics, what happened that really forced a lot of people that maybe were on the fence about it, even though there's still some people who it's not talked about enough, um, is Diamond going under.
Yeah.
For the biggest distribution company for decades to go under, who's essentially just the person in the middle that takes the comic from here and then gives it to the person over there, for them to not work out, obviously Diamond wasn't doing everything great that they could have been doing, but that wouldn't have mattered if the industry itself was still strong.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have mattered if the product was still great. And it would have been easier to get it into the hands of more people if it was. But it really is like it's. I see a lot of, and I don't want to make excuses for Diamond because I'm not a fan of them either. I had a lot of problems with them as well. We left in 2020. If anything, in 2020, I was wondering why the hell aren't more of you guys leaving? Like, just make a website. If you need people to ship some stuff out, hire some people to ship some stuff out, make a shipping department and a website store department and get things going. But it's weird to see that even in the industry, it's still kind of not really a topic of conversation. The
Yeah.
impact, the ramification of that, what that has meant, what it will mean, and where things are going to keep going. Because I don't know if we don't, if certain people that have the ability, like you were talking about the power dynamic, if certain people that have the ability to step up and actually do actually affect change don't do that, then yeah, it's just going to kind of ride out the natural course, which is it's going to be a constant decline until it's of next to nothing, or at least a shadow of its former self, which is kind of already at. But
Yeah.
it seems like a lot of people, even when they do have that ability and that power, they just kind of shrug and go, I guess this is how it is. Or worse, I see people that go, well, this happens every like 30 years with comics. And not to
Yeah.
the extent in which it's occurring. Like even when comics were hitting the lows every, 20 to 30 years, still had a lot more going on and a
Yeah.
lot more readers and were a lot more prevalent and producing a lot better content during those time periods. Uh, Now it's, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is comics are still less than 100 years old. So, how do you know this isn't a permanent thing? I mean, I think part of the big problem is they did such a poor job that they you know knocked the legs out of the industry to such an extent that there's really no profit to be made if you do a good job, because the distribution's gone, and the guys who maybe could have done it, uh, Jim Shooter's gone now. Uh, Jim Lee doesn't have any, like, he knows how to run a company, but he doesn't seem interested in, going to bat for anything. So, and the other problem is, if you look at the big two, they are owned by multinational corporations who make a cajillion dollars every year. That the comic companies, like, are an addition error on their sheets. They just have them for the prestige and to mine the IP. So there's really no downside for them letting these companies run themselves in the ground. And if there's no downside, no one in the comic companies are going to be held responsible. Either
Yeah, that's
told
true.
to get their act together or replaced with somebody who actually could. And so, like right now, let's say we resurrect zombie Jim Shooter, and he takes over. It's going to take somebody 20 years to right the
Oh
ship.
yeah. Oh yeah. And even then, I don't think they ever would. I don't
Yeah,
think I don't think the system and the problem, and it's like this with a lot of things right now. The systems in place and the problems in place,
yeah,
some of it really has to ride out its full path that it's taking and hit rock bottom before anyone could possibly do anything
yeah,
about it, because it would be a complete and total futile effort to go in there and say, okay, well, maybe we'll start fixing it up now. um, Everyone would have to
yeah,
get on board with it. It couldn't just be one company or one person coming in with ideas or whatever it may be. And Dr. Mass says Jim Lee just wants to draw and be left alone. I kind of wish he would just draw
yeah.
and be left alone. You
At least
know,
then we get some nice looking books.
yeah, yeah. And I hate the fact that he's kind of tied to a weird-ish era of DC Comics.
Yep.
You know, but yeah, so it's a really weird place for the industry to be at, because it's kind of not so much a thriving industry as it is like a sandbox for
Yep.
another industry. And you're always going to have the comics medium, but the comics industry is a different thing. And that's what, when the machine was working properly, that's what enabled people to be able to make a living and have this explosion of ideas and everything that really gelled and resonated. And now it feels like it's about flooding the market space, getting as much market share as you possibly can.
Yep.
It's not because it's a super easy fix for the bigger companies. It's called just cut back the amount of books you put out.
Yeah.
Cut back make them just the ones that really seem to resonate with people, the characters that really seem to resonate. You don't have to get rid of characters. Those characters that don't matter and don't need their own book could still just guest star in the books that people do care about. You
Yep.
concentrate your readership. Your sales now, instead of, like, I don't know, whatever character has 20 books, now they have two or three. And these two or three now have 4 to 5 times the level of books being printed and the readership attached to them. You get a shared cultural experience, which is really important in stuff like this. And then you also have that revenue booster of advertising dollars, because you say, look at the big amount of books that we print. The
Yep.
economy of scale is better, and you can sell advertising at a premium. And that's kind of, advertising is what kept newsstand afloat
Oh yeah.
for the publishers. They said, well, we're putting 1 million books out there. You get an ad on the back cover, even if they never buy it. If they pick it up and see your ad, money in the bank. But if they sell a quarter of those, which is kind of what it was around, like 22 to 28% of what would go to newsstand would sell, um, then even better. They take the book home and now they can flip through it and whatever else. But so you lose all of that, and you don't have any of the upside of what these lines are, and now everything's just all over the place. The stories go nowhere. You got to either retcon them or bring them back to status quo somehow, and it's usually done pretty sloppily. And the more you do that, the more your readership, which used to just go, yes, this is basically like tuning into my friend for the month or whatever, and seeing what their life was like and what they were up against. Instead, they go, none of this matters. So
Yeah.
why do I really care about it? And then you kind of just have that collector market flooding with like the false collector market from the variants and the whatever incentives. And it just becomes like this weird, sad industry that kind of, and I hate to say it because I love comics, obviously, but it's like a part of me is like, I would just rather see it die than
Yeah.
continue to do what it's doing right now. Like there's times I'm in the store and something will come on that's a horrible cover of a great song, and I turn to my wife and I'm like, I think they could stop making music now. It's we're all set. We don't need any more songs. We're all good. Like we have more than enough songs that have existed up until this point. We don't need anything anymore. People can stop making them. And sometimes when I'm watching, or I don't really watch modern movies anymore. I try to give trailers a try, and I'll see a trailer and I'm like, I think we're all set with movies. People don't need to make those anymore.
Yep.
We're all good. If I need a Superman, if I needed this, if I needed that, I got more than enough to go back and take a look and enjoy. And if
There's
I want something new, I'll dig into the past and find something that I guarantee is going to be better than whatever the hell's out right now.
there's a quote from Ridley Scott from a year or two ago, and he said, "The movie scene is so bad, I have to watch my old movies." Now, I
Yeah,
will point out that he is the guy who made Gladiator 2.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah. And I get it. It's a sad part of the mega beast of the creative industry now. Is there's so much, quid pro quo and politics that run around, and I don't mean like the who you vote for kind, obviously. I mean like the, who do you help out?
yeah,
Who did you a favor? Who are you gonna have to do a favor? It's so like that with so many of these industries now
yeah,
that I don't even know who to blame anymore. Even when I see a bad comic now, I'm like, I don't even know who to be upset with. I don't know if I should be upset with the writer or the artist or the whoever, because there's probably an editor in there. But then is the editor being told, no, you put it out like this because so and so got word from above, who got word from above, who got word from
yeah,
above, so you don't even know, where do you correct? Like, to your whole thing about bringing back like zombie Jim Shooter, you don't. I don't think Jim Shooter would even know at this point where the hell to begin,
yeah,
because I have a feeling someone like that would go in and think, okay, this must be the problem, and then they would go in like what I just gave with the oversimplification of how to fix both companies. You go, yeah, but the people that own them, they don't want that to happen. So that
yeah,
idea you just had doesn't matter. And
yeah,
you go, okay, well, what do you want? How it is right now. That's what we want. We want what we're doing right now. And he's like, well, what we're doing right now is it's not working. Maybe not working in the logical sense, but it's working for what we need it to be, you know. And that's the part that it makes you feel like you're Alice in the March in the Mad Hatter's dinner table there, where like
yeah,
nothing makes any sense. The conversation is nuts, you know, and you're just trying to figure your way out of it, and just how do you get out? How does this happen?
yeah, yeah. I don't disagree. The only potential bright spot for American comics, which is bad for the consumer, is that Japan is always 10 years behind the US culturally. So all the crap that we started going through in 2015, they're going through that now,
Oh,
which means your manga in the next couple of years and your anime in the next couple of years is probably going to suck pretty hard, which should give American comics a good opening, but I don't think anybody's going to
But
capitalize on that.
but is that a tried and true rule? Does it have to be that way? Because I always look at
It,
Japan in
it
the
doesn't
modern
have to,
sense
but it
and
is.
think, Japan is like as close as what we're gonna get to looking at like a utopian style future, at
Well, I
least
mean,
superficially.
well, not to get too political, but I lived there in '04, and when I was there in '04, alternative rock was a big thing in 2004.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
94, 2004. And it's like that. And then like rap was just starting to get popular in 2004. And then the only thing that they were really ahead of us on were toilets and girl bands and boy bands. They were ahead of the curve on those. But if you look at what's going on over there politically now, it's a lot like 2015.
Oh
Um,
boy. Yeah.
and yeah,
That's not good then.
yeah, now they did just elect a new prime minister. We'll see what happens with that. But if you look at what's been going on with like manga and anime, it's like they're getting the same diversity things. They're getting oh, you can't use this theme, you can't use that theme, you can't have busty women, you can't um they had manga which was like romance manga, right? And of course some of the stories were teenagers because who buys a lot of comic type properties? Teenagers. And now they're, oh no, but you can't have underage people. It's like, yeah, but it's marketed for underage people. It's like you couldn't have Peter Parker in high school kiss Gwen Stacy or something. It's like, why? What's wrong with you? And so I don't know. That's kind of where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's it's like a version of the 90s political correctness on steroids
Yeah,
and meth.
exactly. The only thing I don't know right now is if the cancel culture is that bad over there. I haven't been able to figure that out.
Ah. Well,
But
I'm sure it will be.
yeah, give it a couple years.
Yeah, one hand washes the other. You can't have one because there's always going to be someone who wants to push the envelope and
Sure.
be on the edge, and that person's always going to be forced to get back in line. There's always that square peg. So to get rid of them and to make sure that they're not an example to follow, you get the cancel culture stuff happening.
Bill says the industry can't crash. I was just about to get discovered. I don't know. I think someday someone with some money is going to find a bunch of indie artists and like sort of repackage all their stuff and like form sort of a new company and resell it that way. And I know that there are some smaller companies that effectively do that, but at some point somebody's going to figure out how to get that to work. Like it's going to be like Elon Musk or something. And he'll distribute for free on Twitter with your subscription, and then if you want to get print versions, you can get print versions. That's my prediction.
Man, so it's just going to get worse, huh?
Pretty much. But
Oh boy, that I swear I tend towards, I know it doesn't sound like it, but I tend to be more optimistic with a lot of situations, but I think I'm only optimistic about what I think I can do. That's what I've learned
Mhm.
over the years. I'm very pessimistic about what everybody else can do. So if it's like, okay, I could do this thing, all right, I just, I'm like Batman, just give me enough time, and I could prep and I could, just need prep time and I could take down anybody, right? I could do anything. Just give me prep time. But I've learned over the years that I often give people that same kind of belief that, okay, if I just believe in them enough, give them enough time, yeah, totally, they can accomplish whatever. And over the years, I'm like, I should probably stop doing that.
um, but speaking of comics that don't suck, what's going on with Alterna? Now did you just start the new Kickstarter or not Kickstarter, but the crowdfunding for the new issues, or is that
That's
coming
tomorrow.
up?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
tomorrow.
tomorrow we do the pre-order for it came out on Wednesday number 22 and 23, which is an anthology that a lot of people seem to really enjoy.
Yes.
Usually about sci-fi, horror, and fantasy, and usually features like 3 to 4 stories per issue. These will be the first issues that we print in-house. So they're going to look even better than our previous issues because the in-house printing has been looking phenomenal. But yeah, so tomorrow is when those go live for pre-order, and we're only making 500 copies. I was going to put it on Indiegogo, Kickstarter, and Fund My Comic, and I still might put it there too, but I'm going to start it off on the Alterna site.
Okay.
And then I'll see how it goes, and I might do like 2-week campaigns on each platform once like November hits. So I might give it like the
Hmm.
rest of the whole month of October, get it on the Alterna site if you want. Only 500 are going to be printed in total, which means that because the creators on the book get comp copies based on how big their
Ah.
story is. So I'm including those in the count of 500 printed overall. So there's only going to really be like I think 380 ish available to purchase. I don't think that those are all going to sell out. Usually, it came out on a Wednesday was kind of like a high 200 in the selling
Hmm.
range when we were taking it independent and just selling direct because we don't do distribution anymore. So we'll see how that goes, and then whatever is left over, like let's say 100 are left over, I'll put that to Indiegogo for 2 weeks, and then whatever's left over from Indiegogo, that'll go to Kickstarter. Whatever is left over from that, will go to Fund My Comic, like that kind of a thing. I don't know if it'll be in that order specifically, but it'll be that sort of. And if we don't have any left over, then I'm not going to do whatever the crowdfunder is because there just won't be any copies.
Yeah.
So I definitely recommend go to alternativecomics.com for all of your Alterna shopping needs. Don't go to the crowdfunders unless you really, really, really wanna. I don't want to tell people not to go there if they do want to go there, but I really do want to encourage people to go to the Alterna site instead. You can sign up, you get points when you buy stuff. It's free to become a site member, and you get all these different discounts and stuff because of that. And sign up for the newsletter, you get 10 free digital comics, plus you get a 10% off coupon for your first total order. There's just so many different things you could do with the Alterna site that you can't do with the crowdfunding. We got, I think, 300 to 400 items on the Alterna site as well. So you can have like a one-stop shop for everything, whereas most of those items don't end up going to a crowdfunder. So go to alternativecomics.com, support direct, and if you do want to support on Indiegogo or wherever else, let me know where you prefer to go, um, because that helps me out. Because it takes time to put the crowdfunders and stuff up too. I don't want to put them up where people don't necessarily want to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so also another thing with Indiegogo, they recently got bought out by somebody. I forget who, but they sent an email out the other day that was saying that they were pausing the launching of campaigns between the 9th to like the 16th or something. I think it was for a week.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so we definitely, no matter what, would not be launching on there until after that point. And I want to kind of take a look around and see what they did to everything before I even consider launching something on there.
Yeah, for sure. So now you mentioned this is going to be the first one that's totally printed in house. How are you coming along with that? Like, are you sort of like picking up speed as you're printing more stuff? Are you figuring out all the tricks of the trade to make it work better?
Yeah, it's definitely been better for like we recently had 6 books that went back to print that we kind of really couldn't put back to print if we had to go the traditional route because we would have had to print so many copies. And I didn't feel comfortable going back to print when I knew maybe 30 to 50 of these would be sold. I don't want to make a 500 copy run and be left with the huge amount of
Yeah.
unsellable books for a massive price tag to get that print run going. So we went back to print with 6 books that some of which never went back to print before. So that was a totally different stress-free experience compared to in the past dealing with printers for the newsprint books and sending print runs through and worrying about the unsold inventory and all of that. It's kind of like a mix of print on demand and digital printing in a way, but
Hmm.
we're printing on high grade newsprint. I'm mulling over an option if I should go back to not abandon the high grade newsprint, but offer an option for the low grade newsprint. The only reason I'm unsure of whether or not to do that at this point would be you really got to babysit the project when it's on the low grade
Mm.
newsprint, because it's such a thinner paper that depending on what's getting printed, if it's a lot more ink saturation, the
Yeah.
paper has a tendency to curl a lot more when it comes out of the machine.
Hmm.
And if you abandon the project for like even a minute, like the machine spits out a bunch of copies per minute, you can come back to like a pile up that looks like an accordion gone wrong. And that's a harrowing experience because you're like, oh man, there's like 30 pages just like jammed up because one of them curled and then the other one curled and it got spitting up on each other and condensing. So they would have to ironically cost a little more to get it on the lower grade because it takes more time for me to sit there and babysit the project and make sure everything is coming out correctly, as opposed to the high grade newsprint that it's really rare when that situation happens. So I usually can do a lot of other things while the book is printing up. Like I said, I'm mulling it over right now. We'll see how it goes. I'll probably think about it more in 2026, but at least it's an option. We can print
Yeah.
on it, but I would prefer not to because of that factor. But if a lot of people really want it on that low grade, it's a little bit more of like a grayer, kind of warmer tone to the paper. It's thinner. It's kind of almost exactly like what we used to get done on the commercially printed books. It's kind of like that paper stock. But if people really want it and they don't mind paying probably like 10 to 15% more per book, then I might consider it. But yeah, right now I'm just
Mm.
kind of thinking about it.
Interesting. And so, one of the other things that you've been doing recently is you are now officially offering your services as editor.
Yes, I am. Yeah, and I've been on I think about 5 books so far. 5 creators have hired me, and 3
That's
of
awesome.
them are done. And 2 of them I actually sent notes to somebody earlier today. So, I mean, that's why I got into making comics and setting up Alterna to begin with, was to try to help other people to make comics. And it seems like the more technology and different platforms come about, the role of a publisher to what it was uh, isn't really the same thing. And in some cases, just plain old isn't needed anymore. But what is unbelievably in short supply right now is an
Yes.
editor that can actually and understands comics editing, not just proofreading, not just yeah, I guess this page looks okay, that kind of thing, or this page doesn't look good. I can't explain to you why. It just doesn't. And there are comic editors who do stuff like that,
Yeah.
where and I've had these conversations with people. Usually, they're kind of begging me, "Please, can you edit my book? I'm dealing with this person right now. I hired them, and they're not giving me any proper feedback at all. Something is wrong with it. I can't figure it out. Can you?" And I figured, okay, well, maybe I'll do that. We're not publishing as many books as we used to at Alterna because I've become very picky with that kind of stuff, and it's opened up more time to maybe take on those kinds of jobs. And so far, it's been great, and it's working with everybody to make their stories as good as they possibly can be, within the realm of possibility for them as a creator. It's been fantastic. I've been really enjoying it. So hopefully, I could take more of that kind of work on, and I'm very affordable. I don't want to give my page rate away,
Sure.
but I have 2 options where it's either you can get me for the writings for your script, or you can get me for the art, or you can get me for both. And I give you a discount if you get me for both. And then that's more like a full editor. But so far, a couple projects for all 3 versions of the editing have been great. And it's been nice. It's been a really good experience.
Yeah, and I would just like to put this out there as someone who has been talking with people trying to publish comics, and people who've always dreamt of making their own comics since like 2019 now. Um, if you really want, if you really say like, yes, I want to make comics, I want it to be a business, whether it's your main source of income or a very profitable side gig. For the love of God, get an editor, because even look, go back to the great books of the 80s and the 90s. They all had editors, and they were all calling out the artists and the writers on their BS.
Yeah, and you'll
Um,
notice a shift. You'll go like, this guy used to be really good. What happened? And you're like, oh, I bet it was the editor.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, that was one of the problems, especially with the early Image comics, where, I mean, I think technically they had editors, but like, there was nobody who could tell them what what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you are going to get an editor and you are not an experienced comic book maker, then whether it be Pete or someone else, but Pete's available. For the love of God, get somebody who knows what to do with the art, because most of the people I talk to they want to make comics and they're on the writing side. They don't have a whole lot of experience with art, and then they get like a copy editor or even a story editor, but that also comes from like a prose side, and the artist is not always your friend. You need to know when to call them out on stuff and rein them in, and when to encourage them to make them better. And if nobody on your side except for that artist has um, experience with trying to figure out what kind of art tells your story the best, then you might be in a world of hurt.
Yeah. Plus, you
And
get the upside of let me say the mean things,
yes,
and blame it on me. I'm used to people
yes.
hating me anyway and being like, yeah, I think you're great, but hey, Pete's the editor on this, what are you going to do?
So now, if somebody did want to hire you for that, how would they get in contact with you? Through the Alterna website?
They could send me an email at pete@alternacomics.com, or they can reach out on Twitter, at Peter Simeti. But email is probably the best way. And also, when you do reach out to me, however you do, let me know what the book is about. Sometimes people don't let me know what the book is about. They just want a page rate. And it's very similar
Sure.
in my approach of like when you're sending in a submission to a publisher, you want to make sure the publisher is good for you too, not just that
Mhm.
you got something that's good for them. So, let me know what your story is, what it's about. Let me know how many pages. Let me know any kind of deadline you have. Let me know who's on the creative team if you have that in place yet. Sometimes people don't. Sometimes they just have a script. But let me know as much information as you can that's about your book and what you're doing, because sometimes there's a book that maybe I go, I'm not well versed in tackling that subject matter for you. I can only do so much. So it's that kind of a thing of I'm going to make sure that I'm right also for your project, not just that, oh yeah, sure, whatever, yeah, here's the page rate and I'll just do anything, and then I get the script or whatever and I go, I have no idea what to say here. So there's all kinds of different ways to go about that, but I always want to make sure that I'm a right fit for that creative team too. And especially like what you're talking about with the art, if you're someone who really isn't, maybe you don't think visually with how to approach page composition and how it adapts from your script to the visual page, you really definitely need an editor, whether it's me or not me. You definitely need somebody that's going to be able to kind of just even give you some kind of some kind of feedback, not just a critique on the art, but just feedback to be like your first line of defense before this gets final approval, goes to print,
Mhm.
and then becomes a disaster that you just can't maintain. I wish I had me editing my work 20 years ago. it would have made me better at the time. But you can't go back in time.
Yeah.
So at least I'm here for anybody who maybe was me 20 years ago starting off, that wouldn't, mind spending a couple of bucks. And I do mean it. It's not that expensive. I'm not charging, like $1,000 here to edit your book, unless it's a lot of pages. So it's one of those things where take that time, invest a little bit of that, especially if you're unsure. If you're already a confident, well seasoned veteran storyteller, I don't know, maybe I can still probably add a little bit of something, but I probably can't add a whole hell of a lot. But if you're someone who's just starting off, 5 comics or less that you've worked on, I was gonna say give me a ring. Give me an email. Don't call me up.
Yeah. Yeah, and to the authors, the other thing that I would add is one thing that authors I find when it's their first comic do not consider is that there are a lot of things that are the story is better told visually than with words.
Yes.
So
Yes.
not even like a problem with Claremontian levels of dialogue balloons. It's just certain things
Yeah.
a good artist will be able to, maybe you can even get a GI Joe silent issue
Yeah, I defer
if the
to
artist is good enough.
I always when it's an emotional scene, I always defer to Billy Joel. Leave a tender moment alone.
And King Cryptid. I think are is there going to be another pre-sale for the King Cryptid issues this year or next year or
Probably sometime next year.
next
Next
year?
year.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Right now we're in the throes of Blood Moon and getting that done, and we're probably around like the 40% mark. So that's probably not going to be done and complete until maybe January, February. And then the King Cryptid issues are going to be continued to be worked on by that time. I'm guessing, I'm looking at the calendar now, probably February, March, everything will be done. The biggest, I have to send off the Blood Moon graphic novel to a commercial printer. I don't print
Mhm.
the graphic novels in house, but the King Cryptid issues I'll print in house. So as soon as the issues are done, they're done, and I can get them going and start printing and shipping them out. There isn't like before in the past I'd have to wait like 4 months sometime for a printer to from the time I gave them the files to the time I got everything back, and just cross my fingers and hope they didn't destroy something along the way or there wasn't a misprint, which was a
Yeah.
rarity. So this is one of the big upsides is that even if I'm late on something, which I hate, but sometimes there's so many moving parts and there's so many things that happen in life that you can't help it. It's either going to be late or it's going to be horrible. Um, I'd rather have it just be late and be good.
Yeah.
So I can start printing those, shipping them out like immediately, literally like hot off the presses kind of a thing. And that's kind of a big upside to printing in house as opposed to having to wait on it.
Yeah. Nice. Well, anything else we should know about Alterna comics, myth, legend, folklore?
Um, hmm. I mean, there's a lot of what feels like he's got to be incorporating it in Red Koi. There's got to be a
Mhm.
lot of that kind of stuff in that series. I know he's big into like Japanese folklore, but he's also diving into other cultures as well. And then if Rob Geronimo is not diving into some kind of something, I don't even know then. If that's all
Yeah.
just coming 100% from him without any contextual reference outside of his experience, and Rob needs a lot of help. But I'm pretty sure, knowing him, he's a student of history, he's a teacher of history. I'm pretty sure that he's pulling from the depths of ancient texts and biblical reference and all that kind of stuff to bring that story about.
Yeah, and he's got a great new YouTube series on he's doing historical characters, well, art and historical characters. So I would highly recommend anyone who's interested in that, go check out Rob Geronimo's channel.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so for anyone watching on my channel, go check out at Peter Simeti on Twitter, but also Comic Book Radio at Comic Book Radio over on YouTube. Great channel. Pete often has
Thank you.
fantastic guests, various topics, how to make comics, history of comics, all sorts of great things like that. And for anyone here who is watching on Pete's channel, hey, come on over to YouTube / @YangYanJao4. Give me a sign up. We've got a lot of fantastic guests coming up this month talking about horror. Tomorrow night, I have author Jay Ishiro Finney. We're going to talk about aliens and horror in stories about people from beyond the stars, not the other kind. We're not talking about that. And let's see, we've got a bunch of guests for the next 2 weeks coming up with on the 30th at midnight. We are going to have a roundtable discussion of our top 10 H.P. Lovecraft stories.
Oh, okay.
So if anyone is
Nice.
still up,
Very nice.
Thank
Well,
you.
hopefully you can keep Jay with the alien talk on course a little bit more than I was tonight.
I'm expecting I will not. Oh, wait, was he on your channel tonight?
No.
You said- or-
No. I meant me on your channel.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Very
It's good. He
tangent
likes
land.
aliens. He
That's
likes
what I did.
aliens, so
Yeah. Sorry
we'll
about
see
all the,
how it goes.
Hopefully all the tangents kind of made sense and were somewhat
They
interesting.
did to me.
And yeah, good. If not, if you're out there and you're like, man, I came in for some hardcore American folklore and horror, and what the hell is this guy talking about? He worked at a urology place. What the hell do I care?
Well, I don't know. To me, working at a urologist place would be horror.
Yeah, I thought so too. That's why I talked about it.
Having to scan stuff and
Yeah, poking and
photographs
prodding in
maybe.
places that you'd rather,
Yeah.
you'd rather them not. This is not a good time. It's modern horror, I suppose.
All right. Well, everyone, good night. I will see hopefully some of you tomorrow, and